This is The Download from Sounds Profitable, your daily source for the essential news in the business of podcasting. I'm Gavin Gaddis. Here's what you need to know for today, Thursday, January 29th. First up, why mid-tier creators are the industry's next big growth opportunity. Advertising Week brings on DAX U.S. President Brian Conlon as a guest writer to discuss the spending gap between how much audience influencers reach versus how much ad spend they actually get. Conlon outlines 5 actionable steps that any brand, regardless of size or budget, can use to more effectively employ mid-tier creators, those with tens of thousands of followers versus tens of millions. Steps that combine to create an atmosphere where a campaign can safely test the waters of someone like a new-to-the-brand podcaster who can deliver relevance instead of vanity metrics. 40,000 leaned-in weekly podcast listeners who are tuning in for 40 minutes per week is an incredibly attentive audience in comparison to a multi-million-view social media post, for example. Next up, the microphone is democratized, the platform is not. Dr. Byron Green-Kalish, EVP of Culture and Inclusion at PRX, writes about his experience working with Sounds Profitable and Podcast Movement to build new guidelines for promoting equity and diversity in the podcast conference space. As the Creators 2025 shows, multicultural creators are outpacing white podcast creators in starting new podcasts at rates up to 2 times. Yet those stages and platforms at events don't represent that. To reflect the diversity of podcasting, it's on the business side of the industry to build an equitable and inclusive space, a space where attendees can see themselves represented on stage and welcomed into that space. From thoughtful panel selection to physically building accessibility into environments, so something as simple as an executive in a wheelchair feels welcome at a conference instead of a nuisance who requires special attention anytime they wish to participate. As Dr. Green-Kalish says, equity has to be built and nurtured. Podcast Movement Evolutions unveils first wave of South by Southwest talent. Podcast Movement is coming to South by Southwest, and we've got the first wave of featured talent for the conference. As a reminder, Podcast Movement Evolutions is taking place March 13th through 15th at Skybox on 6th Street in Austin, Texas. Attendance is free, but building capacity is a natural limitation, so pre-registration is encouraged and linked in today's coverage. This year's lineup includes John Mr. Ballin Allen, a live recording of Table Read performing a script by director Danny Hanks, and a live episode of Scalable. This year also featured the debut of The Discovery Track, a special series of 50-minute sponsored panel sessions following 10-minute spotlight talks designed to give attendees more opportunities to quickly discover new perspectives in the business. Next up, podcast growth starts with a health check. Jonas Woost breaks down a process Bumper has dubbed the podcast health check, often used to address podcasters who feel like their audience has plateaued and there's no obvious way to restart growth. The health check looks at 3 core metrics: people, plays, and time. It's deceptively difficult to figure out how many real, distinct humans are listening to a podcast. Bumper uses Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube numbers to deduplicate over time and build a verified listeners and viewers stat. With these 3 core metrics, Bumper and the podcaster build out from there, looking at things that impact their known audience. How many are new versus returning listeners? How many episodes on average are those people consuming? What topics are the hosts hitting on regularly? How are similar shows performing? With these levels of analysis, a creator can begin to find the gaps that siphon off growth momentum. And finally, 2026 Outlook, a snapshot of U.S. ad spend opportunities and strategies for growth. The IAB has published an outlook for ad spend in the United States with a specific look at projected change to U.S. ad spend year over year by channel. In general, ad spend is expected to grow 9.5% this year thanks to cyclical events like the Winter Olympics, the World Cup, and midterm elections. Podcasts are 4th fastest growing channel projected for this year, expected to grow 9.6% in spend year over year compared to 7.9% year over year growth in 2025. Some of that growth is presumed to be pulling from digital audio budgets overall as digital audio spend forecasting, excluding podcasts, is at 3.8% for 2026, nearly a point less than 2025. As for the rest of the news, OSHA has a new blog post in which they ran Edison Research's top 50 podcast list through OSHA's podcast search optimization benchmark to find metadata patterns and publishing habits shared between chart toppers. Creator Exchange has announced they are partnering with the Ebro Laura Rosenberg Show as their exclusive monetization and advertising representation. The Verge covers the developing story of YouTube cracking down on generative AI slop channels to, as YouTube CEO Neil Mohan says, reduce the spread of low-quality AI content. And Digiday has a piece looking at how advertisers are keeping flexible in 2026 as economic uncertainty remains as wibbly-wobbly as it was last year. As usual, there is one link in your show notes that will take you to today's episode post on Sounds Profitable, and it has every link to every article I just talked about. On the front page of Sounds Profitable, you can also subscribe to the download to get every link sent directly to you in the newsletter version that publishes at the same time as this podcast. As usual, the download is brought to you by myself, Brian Barletta, and Tom Webster. For Sounds Profitable, I'm Gavin Gaddis, and I'll see you tomorrow morning for the download recap.